Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. You're watching myself, Keith Maynard, and three great guest panelists who are today going to answer your questions and give you some really great nuggets of advice to do with the property market. And today I'm joined by Paul Higgs, the founder and CEO of the Millbank Group. We have Tim Stallard, the head of marketing for House Essex. And Paul Newman, founder and MD of Key Property London. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. So, Paul Newman, this first question is for you. What should I know before buying a property with a tenant in situ?
Okay, well, I guess two key things really. It depends if you're buying it as an owner-occupier, i.e. you're buying it there to live yourself, or you're buying it there for investment. So if you're buying it for an owner-occupier, yourself to live there, it's important to know that you're buying the property with vacant possession. So although the tenant may be in a situation right now when you've offered on the property, in reality you want the person out because obviously you're going to be living there yourself. So it's important that the tenancy agreement is expiring on the day, or obviously hopefully before completion, so you're buying it with vacant possession. If you're buying it as an investor and you want the tenant to stay after you've done the research on that it's a good tenant, they're paying rent, they've paid rent for a period of time, then you would again need to make sure that you're happy to take on that tenant and you would be buying it with the tenant in situation. So again, this is very much a thing that you want to discuss with your solicitor, and that would come out in the conveyancing process.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of a worst case scenario if you were to buy a property with a tenant in there who was proving awkward, and possibly this was the reason why they were selling the asset. Mm-hmm. That would come out in the would come out via your employment of a good solicitor, would it? It
would be very unlikely that it wouldn't come out in the conveyancing act. Correct. It would be again something that if you did have these concerns, then it would definitely be a solicitor question, and the solicitor would need to raise that with the other side, the selling solicitor. And if it is a problem tenant, then if you're a professional investor, they're used to dealing with these scenarios, because these scenarios do happen where tenants don't pay or there's been an issue, complaint, whatever. But again, it's vital that you do your research, vital that you consult with your solicitor. That's why you pay a good solicitor for. And if you're not experienced in dealing with problem tenants, my advice would be steer clear. If you're a professional investor, however, and you're prepared to take that risk, and it is a calculated risk in some respects, then again, liaise with the solicitor, they will make an informed decision, and then it's down to you.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed.
Sure.
Tim, we're first-time buyers attending our third property auction next month, having previously lost out on price by £12,000 on a £135,000 property, and a vendor changing his mind on the day. This time, with a mortgage in principle and a 10% deposit needed, we're ready to take on all comers. But if we win, how do we know our vendor will actually give us mortgage approval for the agreed sale price? Also, do we have to insure the property straight away, or is it still the responsibility of the owner?
Right, okay. In regards to the offer in principle, the truth is you can't be 100% sure. Any decent auctioneer would definitely strongly advise any potential buyer to get a formal mortgage offer before attending the auction. There's a multitude of reasons for this. If the lender, for whatever reason, decides after the auction that they're not going to lend the money, you're still liable, you've still exchanged contracts. So my advice to this couple would be, get the offer in principle. If the lenders need some sort of survey, most of the time that can be catered for just by liaising with the auctioneers. But an offer in principle, I wouldn't be bidding at auction with just an offer in principle. If it was for a lower value, you could look at something along the lines of bridging finance, and that may help. But yes, get the formal mortgage offer. Bid from a position of security is definitely the best advice that I could give in that respect.
And regards to the insurance?
The RICS Common Auction conditions state that the vendor is liable to ensure that the property is insured from the contract date to the completion date. However, it is possible that can be amended via a document called the Special Conditions, which will be found in the legal packs of any of the lots offered. So always read those legal packs and make sure you don't want to be purchasing a property and then find out on the day that you have to insure it. Even though a lot of auctioneers, they will have financial companies in attendance that can arrange things like bridging loans or insurance.
Excellent advice. Thank you very much indeed. And Paul, your question from our viewers at home is this. Can anyone tell me, or can you tell me more to the point, Paul, if an individual change of use, for instance, from a single large home into an HMO, will be seen favourably by the planning department of a local council who have targets to find more new homes?
So there's two aspects to that question really. And it's worth explaining them. So firstly, the high level central government planning policy, the National Planning Policy Framework, does talk about how local authorities should work out the supply and demand of homes in their area and effectively demonstrate how there's enough land or units available to fulfil the need. Okay, so it's a thing they've got to demonstrate that they've got a thing called the 5-year housing land supply. Okay, so they have to go away, do various surveys and research in order to come up with some numbers. It may be it's either we've got enough units or we haven't got enough units. In most cases, they haven't got enough units. Everyone knows there's a massive demand for housing. Okay, so but however, even where a local authority has got a demonstrable need for additional housing units, that doesn't mean they can go anywhere. Okay, so even once they've got a deficit in their 5-year housing land supply, you still need to come down and look at detailed planning policy to establish, okay, a load of housing is needed in this area. You then got to answer the question, where's it going to go? Okay, when you're now into the detailed policy, which is going to be specific for every local authority. So to answer the question about just because there's a housing need, that in itself isn't going to be enough to justify necessarily changing a house to a bigger HMO. It could be a slight factor. What's going to be much more important is the detailed planning policy, the specifics. Some local authorities are very pro HMOs. Some local authorities now are very anti HMOs. Some local authorities are pro in parts of the borough and very anti in other parts of the borough. So you really need to, the housing requirement alone is not going to swing it. You need to get into the nitty gritty of the detailed planning policy. What I probably would say is a general rule is planning as regards HMOs has tended to be getting harder. It's nowhere near as easy to get change of use to HMOs now as it was perhaps 2, 3, 5 or 10 years ago.
Is there still a better yield? There's this impression that you're going to get a better yield, that you're going to get a bit of profit out of an HMO as opposed to leaving it as a house or turning it into flats. Is that a misconception nowadays, or is that still the case? No,
I mean, I'm a developer more than an investor, so I'm not an HMO guy, so I'm not an expert. However, I am in the market and I sort of know what's going on. I think one of the things with HMOs where people have done very well is where they've sort of added a development aspect to it. So perhaps they've found a house, stuck on a bit of an extension, maybe done the loft, split it up into rooms. So they've created some development value before they've started. So those things tend to yield much higher. And as a general rule, I would say, HMOs are going to yield better than single lets because, of course, they're much more management intensive. So that's, you're effectively paying for the fact you're getting a higher return because you've got to work a bit harder.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. So golden nugget time. Tim, I believe you want to talk to us about the importance of introducing yourself to the auctioneer before you start the bidding process.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic tool. The auctioneer is there for the purchasers, and not enough people do it. A lot of auction bidders don't want to discuss why they're there or what they're looking to invest in for whatever reason. However, the auctioneer can be there to guide you, can be there to help you, but also when you're sitting in a sea of faces and the auctioneer is looking for bids, if he knows one person is there for a specific property, he'll seek them out. So if you put yourself in a situation where there's 2 bidders for the same property, they've both got the same maximum offer, the auctioneer can only take one of those bids, and he's only going to take the bid from the one that he knows, the one that he's looking towards. So always introduce yourself to the auctioneer before the auction and ask some questions if you've got them. He may be able to help you.
Is it worth offering him a box of chocolates as well?
No, I'm afraid not. It has to go to the highest bidder. There's no bribery of any sorts, but I'm sure he'll appreciate it.
And maybe wear bright clothing so you're quite visible. Would that be a...
Why not? Yes.
Why not?
Yeah. Everyone's got their own style. I do know of a few people that like to be very discreet with their bidding, and sometimes they get missed. So yeah, standing out in the crowd could help.
Yeah, you do see kind of some interesting kind of nose scratches.
Twitch of the nose, a very slight nod of the head.
Yeah.
You know, I always tell people, you know, if you're going to sneeze, turn around, do it as discreetly as you can. Otherwise, you may have bought yourself a house inadvertently.
Definitely. Well, don't forget to join us after the break, where we'll be looking at how you should prepare your house for resale and also giving you some more invaluable property advice. See you soon. Welcome back. You are watching Property Question Time, and right now it's Golden Nugget Opportunity, where we share with you some wonderful pieces of information that might help you improve your ability of operating within the property market. So we're going to come first of all to yourself, Paul Newman. I believe you want to chat to us about the importance of how we prepare property for sale.
Absolutely. I think obviously if you're putting a property for sale, and the idea is to sell the property as quickly and efficiently as possible. So two major things. Firstly, first impressions count, right? So from the outside, walking up to the front door, if you're living in a flat that's a communal hallway, making sure it's clean, it's tidy, it's presentable, because that first impression is vitally important to the buyer. Secondly, preparing the inside. So from an aesthetics perspective, everywhere is clean, tidy, decluttered, no washing, no pots in the sink. You know, these sound all basic common sense things, but believe me, 20 years in the business and I've seen fair sight of things that people think that their property is presentable and it's not. And obviously getting buyers through the door, you want to make that impression good and you want to make sure people feel comfortable in the environment that they're going to potentially buy. And secondly, very important from a legal perspective, to have all your paperwork. So before, engage with a solicitor, get all the documentation needed in preparation for sale, whether it be a freehold or a leasehold. If it's a leasehold property, there will be more paperwork, unfortunately, for you to fill out, and we all hate paperwork. So again, have a good solicitor, make sure that all your paperwork is there. So once you do get a buyer that wants to, and you agree a price, and you agree to engage your solicitor to sell the property to this person at an agreed price, that all your paperwork is there ready to go. So there's no delay in the conveyancing process. Oh, we need to get this form filled out, we need to get this, we need to get that. So the more preparation you can do in both, as I say, the aesthetics of the impressions of the property and how it looks and how it feels, and also from a paperwork perspective in the legal stuff, vitally important that all that's ready, and that will certainly help people and help the viewers, you know, secure a prompt and efficient sale.
Is it worthwhile, would you say, to redecorate in more neutrally before resale? Because some people are quite individual, maybe, in the way they've chosen to decorate their homes.
Yeah, I could have gone into that a bit more, but as you've answered the question, it's a very good question. And you're right, people will have different tastes. So the more neutral a property is, then the more wider base of people that it's going to appeal to. But again, I would go back to very much more, it's more about the property being tidy, presentable, no dirty laundry. Again, if you want to go the whole of decoration, if there's damp, if there is decoration problems, then that's something that I would definitely recommend that you address prior to putting it on the market, because these are going to be things that will act as a negative. And again, you want it to be a positive experience when buyers come through the door. At the end of the day, you're trying to create interest. So the more that you can do as a seller to create their interest and create the sparks of enthusiasm of buyers, the better for you.
What's the, I mean, it's open to all of you gents, very quickly, just give me the worst property you've walked into presentation-wise, some of the biggest no-nos that you've maybe seen.
I had one a short while ago that belonged to a hoarder. So it was knee deep. It was knee deep. It was a very difficult property to sell. We did suggest that, you know, the few £100 that he invests in getting a skip, the result in the sale price would be
Significant.
Significant, yes.
Yeah.
But that was definitely my worst one.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Actually, quite recently I saw a studio which literally was head height, and it's only a studio, so it's it's very important that they spend that bit of money, get it cleared.
Mm.
The other one that I've personally seen was a flat that was just children's toys everywhere. I walked in the valuation and then he tripped over a train set. All these things don't absolutely aid the process.
Absolutely not. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to come to you, Tim, with a question. How does the auction transfer of property ownership differ from traditional residential conveyancing?
It doesn't really. There are a few differences in terms of the process of sale, but the conveyancing is still essentially the same. You're still signing a TR1 document. You'll still both have your conveyancing solicitors. It's more differences in the process of sale. But I would say that one of the differences with the conveyancing is that the contract date and the completion date is already in place before the offer's even been made, presuming that it sells in the auction hall. But there's very little difference. It's just a clean and quick way to sell your property.
Excellent, thank you very much. Paul, question for you here. As a developer, should you personally play a major role with the architectural design of developments you undertake?
You have to play a major role. When I say design, I'm not necessarily talking about the nitty gritty of what it looks like on the outside. So the aesthetic design, although you should and will want to be involved in that as well. But it's more about in fact it's the developer's job to get involved in the detailed design of the whole scheme. So we have to. It all starts by a developer having the vision, seeing the potential, going away and doing a whole load of analysis and research and market research, and then giving the architect and planning consultant a very, very detailed brief. They then go away and use their flair and expertise and skill to do what they're good at, but it's not their job to see the bigger picture and do everything. So absolutely, developers have to get massively involved in the design.
A question off the back of that, I suppose. What's been the most enjoyable development that you've ever been involved with?
Blimey. Well, I've been involved in a lot, thousands of units over the years, and they're all enjoyable. One of the things I've sort of come to discover is that I think all really, really good developers actually want to be architects, yeah, because they're interested in getting good buildings created. Obviously it can be a highly profitable business. So, when we're in business, it's a risky business. So, we're into making money as well. Of course we are. But most really good developers, they like buildings, they like design. So, in one way, they sort of want to be architects. Most really good architects, I've also found, end up sort of wanting to be developers because they realise that it's the developers that are really able to make it all happen. Because the vast majority of architects, their great ideas may never get off the drawing board because it's difficult to make it happen. The ones that do want to make it happen start to realise that it's the developers that make it happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen with architects on their own. So basically the whole development's about a collaboration really between our architects and developers.
And it's good to obviously be very involved with that. And the more specific you can be, in a sense, maybe the greater possibility of your success.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as a developer, the more you understand planning and design, the better you are at working, with the team to get the best out of everything. Great.
Okay. Have either of you gents ever had an experience of being on that side of the fence and developing?
Sell a lot of plots, sell a lot of stuff with planning permission. But from our perspective, once it's away, and we let them get on with it.
You should all collaborate.
Yeah, I've been involved with a lot of development over the years. It's as you say, it's interesting working on my own things, but also working with clients and seeing them do developments, seeing them, from the initial stages of bidding, either buying at auction or actually purchasing for them, seeing their plans, working with people like Paul and putting a plan together and architects and actually seeing the finished product. It's really rewarding for everybody concerned.
It's great a couple of years later when you drive past a development site
Right.
that you've sold and
Yeah.
you see it all finished. You know, that's
Yeah, you feel like you've
it's quite
given
satisfying,
birth
isn't it?
to a child, don't you?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. That's good.
I should add as well that in order to get involved in the architecture and the design, you do actually need to sort of understand how it all works and what it all means. Yeah, I can imagine there are probably architects there sitting watching this thinking, oh my god, nothing worse than people that don't understand how it all works getting involved, trying to tell them what to do and all the rest of it. So yeah, absolutely, as a developer you need to get involved and work with the architects, but you've got to understand what you're talking about first, because otherwise you're going to be perhaps trying to get them to do things that just don't make sense.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, final question for you, Paul.
Sure.
If a solicitor offers a fixed conveyancing fee to sellers, is it possible that something won't get done properly?
Yeah, it sends a little bit of a shiver down my spine when you hear fixed. A fixed fee is fine, but if maybe this person is referring to some of the cheaper internet-based solicitors, I would personally steer away from those. My advice would be speak to 2 or 3 lawyers, at least 2, and speak to people that have been recommended either via an agent that you trust or via a friend or colleague or somebody that has dealt with property in that area, in that region, and similar transactions to yours. And so my advice would be get a couple of opinions, and really also it's not just about numbers. The old saying, you get what you pay for. So get those 2 or 3 quotes in, but also actually physically speak to the lawyer. And where possible, lawyers will be happy to spend the time because it's a client that they want to win. So, and then on that basis, get somebody that you feel comfortable with, because that solicitor you're going to have a lot of interaction with, over the conveyancing process. So it's important that not only is it a good price, but you balance that with having a solicitor that you trust and that you have a good relationship with.
Good advice, thank you very much indeed. Okay, finally a chance for a golden nugget. And this one is yours, Paul, I believe. How the term planning gain is commonly misused. Could you expand?
Yeah, so what planning gain, so the term planning gain, I'm hearing more and more and more, and I know when people are talking about it, they're talking about effectively, making money from planning, okay? Like how can we, squeeze more out of it, make a load of money. I just personally, I really don't like the term gain. It's not the way to do it, right? And I'll explain what is the way to do it in a second. Not only that, the term is wrong. It doesn't even mean what people think they mean. So within property development, there's a well-accepted understanding of what planning gain really means. And what planning gain really means is the gains from development that flow to the wider community. Okay, so it's not the gain that the developer gets. It's the gains that result from development that flow to the wider community. So that's and these usually are provided via Section 106 agreements, which is the legal agreement with the council, which stipulates what's going to be required for the wider community as a result of your development. Most typically on larger schemes it will be affordable housing, but it could be parks and education contributions and things like that. So that's the proper definition of planning gain. So that's what it really means. And then when it comes to doing what people think it means, what it's really about is creating planning value. Okay, so the much better way to think about development is how can I add or create value that I and the landowner then share and benefit from. Yeah, so it's just a much better way of thinking about things. So I was head of land at probably the most aggressive commercial developer that there is. I won't name them, but I know how it works when you've got that type of attitude. I also know how it works when you've got the right type of attitude, which isn't just about gain, it's about creating value and sharing it. Obviously, we were still in it for profit, but it's a totally different way to think about it, and it's the right way to think of it, and you'll be much more successful if you think about it that way and you do it that way.
Okay. Is there certain things that you might, when you buy and purchase a bit of land and you want to develop it, are there certain things in heavily urban areas which are more advantageous? For instance, if you were to find a plot of land, could you turn it into a car park, for instance? Would that be a good use and a simple and straightforward use of that land, as opposed to always turning it into residential property or commercial property?
So the answer to that question is, as always, it depends, okay? Because everything's different. But you know, as a developer, at the end of the day, you know, we've got to do deals, we've got to buy land, we've got to get planning permissions, we've got to get things built and sold, whatever they might be, or built and refinanced to hold as an investment, yeah. But the way that happens is by us maximising land values, okay? So you know, just like when if you want to sell your house, you're probably going to sell it to the person that offers you the most money, yeah? Same for everyone, same for landowners, yeah? So what that means, if I want to persuade landowners to do a deal with me, or I need to beat the competition, I need to be coming up with the thing that maximises the land value. That could be a car park. In most cases, it probably wouldn't be. You know, usually it's residential development of some sort. It could be offices, depending on where you are. So that's the key thing. As a developer, you've always got to be thinking about what is it that's going to maximise the land value, because it's that gets the deal done.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. I appreciate your time and also your answers today. And thank you to you for watching. Don't forget, if you have a burning question that you would like answered, you can find us at property-tv.co.uk and ask your question. And you may well find it answered here live on TV. Thanks for watching. Have a good week from us here in the studio. We'll see you soon.